We just announced our cozy game! A few days ago, the Game Awards took place, and some famous game won everything or something. Who really cares? Because a few days before that, we announced our cozy game at the Wholesome Snack! Woo!
We have been working on this since the beginning of the year, and we are really happy with how the journey has gone so far, especially because we started out without really knowing what makes a game a cozy game, or even just cozy in general. We knew the obvious stuff, like, yeah, they usually have cutesy visuals, and they're very chill games without a lot of challenge, you know, meant to be played to unwind after a long, hard day of scrolling TikTok. But I'm not an artist, so I can't do cutesy visuals, and to me, unwinding means... and comparing the general vibe of... and... that does not really fit the idea of a typical cozy game, does it? So after spending months doing research and development and training and more research and development and more research and training, I think I can finally show you how we designed a cozy game. But first I want to tell you a little bit about our game. I'm a beautiful bug, isn't that cool? Catchmaker is a cozy exploration game where you visit an island full of unique bugs to observe and catch them and make them date? Wait, what? Yeah, that's actually what it says right here. It says it right here. Yeah, you couple up different bugs in an effort to restore the balance of the ecosystem on the island and fill out your encyclopedia. But pay attention. Not everybody likes everything, so you'll have to make sure that they actually like each other's traits to end up as a couple. So if you are into traits like coziness or bug or fun times in the summer, then I have the perfect match for you. It's the game. It's Catchmaker. It's the game. The game would be perfect for you. Our Steam page is up right now, where you can wishlist the game and also see our cool trailer that you saw in the background here. Just click the link in the description. We aim to release a demo early next year, and hopefully later that year the full game as well. We don't know yet what the exact dates will be, so make sure to wishlist and follow our game on Steam as well as on our socials to not miss any future updates. Now, how did we design Catchmaker to be cozy? Well, first we need to define what counts as a cozy game and what doesn't. Now, this is more complicated than I initially thought, as no one seems to have a definitive answer to that question, but sorting that out pretty much draws a path for how we can design coziness. Let's categorize games into cozy and the others, and to know which one goes where, we're gonna look at the design pillars. The number one thing that makes a game cozy is keeping the stress on the player as low as possible. Not the cutesy visuals, not the cutesy interactions, nor any low input or low friction mechanics. They can help reinforce the feeling for sure, but true coziness comes from ensuring that no matter what your players do in your game, they will never feel any serious pressure. There are 3 design pillars that, in my opinion, set you up perfectly to achieve this goal. The first of which is no external pressures. This is a fairly obvious and simple rule to follow, because it essentially just means no time pressure, no sudden difficulty spikes, so basically no outside factors from the game that directly force the player to perform at a certain level. Allowing the player to perform at the level they want to perform at is one of the main things you can do to make the player feel cozy. I think everybody who at one point grinded for a certain rank or tried hard to beat a certain game can confirm that everyone has 2 different game performance modes. Chillin' mode and Sigma mode. And sometimes, for whatever reason, you can't or don't want to enter your Sigma mode tonight. So it's chillin' mode time. Yay! Time to relax and enjoy the coziness. So if you're trying to make a cozy game, you want the player to feel like they're allowed to play this game in chillin' mode on any day that they want. They don't need to perform at any level here. They can be as bad as they want to be, and that allows them to truly tune out all the stress. Even a very low external pressure, like a really generous timer, is a bad idea because the perceived pressure of that timer will be so much higher than no pressure at all. This doesn't mean no difficulty or challenge allowed, but rather that you give the player a lot of time and space to find themselves in this game, and then throughout the game you increase the challenge slowly and steadily. Now this pillar also means avoid performance reviews and preferably easy ways for the player to quantify their performance. For example, time or score sheets after a level. With that, the player risks developing the expectation to perform at a certain level better than their old self by themselves. So you're kind of giving them the opportunity to create an external pressure inside themselves. Kind of like inside external pressure, I guess. Either way, I'll go more into why and what that means for you as the designer later. For now, let's continue with keep it simple. Simple mechanics, simple UI, simple art. You want to avoid overwhelming the player anywhere you can. But again, this does not necessarily mean super mundane stuff. It means easy to understand, learn, and keep track of. If we take a look at a short hike, we can see that the simplicity here is very obvious. Simple UI, in fact, barely any UI. There is not much to keep track of, and the things you do need to keep track of are very easily visible, so we can leave more space for the player to enjoy the simple art. I mean, just look at how easily identifiable everything is in this frame. The player, the background, the path, everything is very easy to understand, and still it looks beautiful, partially because we allow the true game to take up so much screen space. And then the simple mechanics, both in understanding and execution. The movement is kind of the only thing you can do besides interact, and it's intuitive and very easy to use. Now the goal for most games is to have intuitive controls and mechanics, but for non-cozy games or the others, the designers will usually add greater depth to the controls of a specific mechanic, for example through needing precise aim or specific timing to execute or use that mechanic to its fullest potential. In a cozy game, you would try to remove as much friction as possible between the player's thought of using the ability and the execution of the ability, because friction brings pressure, pressure brings stress, so you know how this is all connected. I'm not going to repeat myself here. There are moments where a higher movement mastery is rewarded, but only through side quests or collectibles. So if you're leaving those rewards in the optional content, you're not punishing the lesser skilled players, so there is no pressure to master, but if you do, the game becomes a lot easier and a lot more open. Now I mentioned no punishment, which leads us to the third and arguably most important pillar, no severe consequences or permanent fail states. The secret that doctors don't want you to know that makes a game cozy is not having any permanent fail states. It kinda goes hand in hand with no external pressures. With a permanent fail state, players would risk to lose, or worse, reset progress if they fail. And since most players would want to avoid that, they experience a high pressure to perform. I'll use the gameplay loop to demonstrate how we make sure to avoid that in our cozy game. The gameplay loop is the standard loop that is used to split every challenge in a game into its most basic bits, to ensure every challenge has all the usual components to make a challenge feel, well, challenging. The four main elements are the problem, which is the challenge the player wants to overcome, the solution, which is the plan the player forms in their head to overcome that challenge, the execution of that plan, and the reward for overcoming the challenge. Without these main elements, a challenge would feel dull and become boring really quickly. Different games focus on different parts of the gameplay loop. For example, puzzle and stealth games have a heavy focus on the solution part, while shooters usually focus heavily on the execution. There is a case to be made that some gameplay loops in some games only have 3 of these elements, but that goes beyond what we're talking about today, so I'll leave that for a future video. A permanent fail state, like getting caught sneaking around in Hitman, could be presented like this. The player either plans to do a move that leaves them exposed, or wrongfully executes their plan and they are caught because of it. Like in this case, the player, which is definitely not me, did not see the camera on the other side of the wall that caught them trespassing. Now they enter a new loop. They'll be hunted until they're either dead or out of sight. Because the player was caught by a camera, every guard knows what they look like. This guard then relays that information to the other guards.
The guy was bald and white. clothes look new.
And they're all marked with an orange outline to show the player who knows and who doesn't. So even if the player does manage to escape the current chase, the guards who have seen the player in the chase loop or just know what they look like will recognize them much quicker in their current disguise, so the game state has been permanently changed. You can reset this by changing your disguise, which is what I'm doing right here. Which is what the player... whatever. In a cozy game, if your player fails the execution of an action, the game state shouldn't be changed permanently. They should simply return to the problem, or you need to allow them to easily undo their mistake. But even that is a risk, because it could make the game too easy, which makes the game boring, which is the worst thing that could probably happen to you right now. Trust me. That is how you dampen the severity of consequences and heavily reduce or even eliminate the pressure on the player. You can have fail states in your cozy game if you want to, but you want those fail states to not be harsh. All of these things together can create great pressure. Grinding a time in Neon White is hard because you're always trying to be better than the literal best version of yourself. You literally have to perform at the highest possible level that your Sigma mode can go to that day to achieve your goal of improving your time. And after every try, you get a big screen telling you how much worse you were than your one perfect run 3 months ago. Lots of pressure. Not very cozy. Ultra kill. In Sekiro, you lose half of your XP, coins, and all the progress you've had on that boss, which can sometimes be like a good 5 minutes if you die. Those are some really harsh consequences for failing. Now, I died on purpose here in a stupid way, just to show you what happens if you die. I don't really do this stuff usually. I'm actually really good at games and kind of always in my Sigma mode if you think about it. So I had to give you an infomercial type mess up just to make a point, you know, like... I did it twice just to really hammer it in. Now, how does a game that markets itself as the end-all be-all of cozy games implement these pillars? Tiny Glade puts a lot of emphasis on the fact that in this game you can be in chillin' mode for every single picosecond that you play it, and it does not matter. You're kind of just building stuff for the sake of building. No unlocks, scores, or anything. You just want to make something that will eventually be somewhat beautiful, and you will. So that pillar is a big fat check. And they keep it simple too. Very limited building space, which means there's not much you need to keep track of. And again, minimal UI, boxed in submenus, hidden in more submenus, to really only show you what you need when you need it. And the graphics. So simple, yet so detailed. And while the mechanics and moving around may take a few minutes to get used to, after those few minutes everything flows very neatly. And again, a game where nothing really matters, you just build when you want to build. Obviously no consequences, and obviously a big voluptuous check. Absolutely no pressures does have the downside that players will truly only play and keep playing your game if they really have the urge, the fire in themselves that makes you want to build a tiny glade instead of quests and characters pushing and motivating you. So how does the game with characters and quests and all that stack up? Well, a short hike has no external pressures either. Nothing you need to do except reach the peak of the mountain, a pretty low level you need to perform at, but with unlimited time to learn and lots of possibilities to make achieving that goal easier. No timer or review telling you how well you did in any part of the game, thus forcing you into your Sigma mode, pushing you beyond your limits. None of that, except for maybe the beach ball side quest, but again, optional, so I'll give it a decently sized check. We've discussed its simplicity before, so just a quick recap. It's all very intuitive and easy to get a grasp of, so big check. Big check. And finally, the consequences. You always simply return to the problem. You can only really lose climbing progress, but you either have to go so far out of your way to lose all of it that you simply can't be mad at the game, or you lose so little that it doesn't hurt, nor pressure you that much. But again, nothing else you can lose. No coins, no golden feathers. The game state always stays the same, no matter how often you fall. So, a normal sized check. Both of these games have something in common. Their primary source of motivation is intrinsic. Tiny Glade is probably also the only game I know where the motivation to play is exclusively intrinsic. But is that the secret to coziness? See, Stardew Valley, another game that is often hailed as one of the cozy games of all times, also relies mostly on intrinsic motivation to drive the player. But interestingly enough, it would fail my simple cozy game test. How and why? Well, that's something I'll dive into in my next video. Make sure to wishlist and follow Catchmaker on Steam to be notified when the demo finally drops. I can't tell you exactly when that will happen, because then I'd have to kill you, but make sure to follow us on our socials so you won't miss any updates regarding the game. I hope you guys will like it, and take care.